Athens is a city packed with history, but how easy is it to explore with an elderly relative? This was my Christmas present to Mum. 3 days in the Greek capital on a budget. Here's how we made it work, what we had to adapt, and what we might do differently next time if we were to do it again. Getting there in first impressions. We booked a budget packet out of Luton which had a 7 AM flight, which made sense to book a hotel nearby for the night before. Done a review on that if you want to have a look, but it was still a 15-minute walk to the airport for Mum at 4:45. Not ideal, but she handled it like a champ. Now Mum has COPD and uses a walking stick, and she's 84. We decided not to request special assistance because I know Luton well, and she felt she'd be fine to just have a go. Just a bit slower than everyone else. But here's an unexpected perk. Airport security instantly spotted the walking stick and pulled us into priority. So I'm already finding out travelling with an elderly relative has its advantages. So we arrive at Athens airport. Now this is the thing, the reason I picked Athens was I'd been before. So there was going to be no time wasting finding our way round. But there's obviously going to be a bit, I've only been once. But as soon as we got off the plane, there was like a fleet of people with wheelchairs. They instantly spotted Mum and insisted that she takes the wheelchair. Now for me that was a good move because Athens, I know from last time, it's a hell of a long way from the budget airline gate to the main hall. Bonus, we also got fast track through passport control. In fact, we went for the bit where they normally put the aircrew through. It was lovely. So after that we headed straight for the metro. Now here's a top tip. €20 gets you a 72-hour pass in Athens, which includes one transfer each way from the airport. So you've got the choice of bus, train or metro. It really is a no-brainer because that journey alone is €12. So you're standing there with essentially all your travel needs for the weekend covered. I know some people say you might be cheaper to just tap in, tap out, but at least you know that if you make a mistake or you try a different route, you're covered. So let's check into the hotel. Now I picked the Hotel Socrates for 3 reasons. 1, it had a lift. 2, it was close to the metro. And most importantly, had a balcony for Mum's cheeky ciggy breaks. It was a budget hotel. I've done a review about that as well. And it was more than adequate. In fact, it seemed very similar to another budget hotel I'd stayed in with Book in December. Seems to be a lot of these in Athens and the price is unbelievable. It ticked all the boxes, but here's one thing I regretted immediately. No kettle in the room. I know you get that a lot in Europe, but I was riddled with flu and had a load of Lemsips. And Mum likes a coffee in the morning. In fact, Mum likes a coffee any time of day or night. I think if I was going again, I would take some form of travel kettle. I know it takes valuable space, but coffee is coffee. So for our first stop, Mum had already expressed a desire to see the changing of the guard at Syntagma Square, or as she puts it, the soldiers in skirts. So we headed straight to Syntagma to see the changing of the guard. If you're travelling with someone older, this is a perfect activity. It's short, it's interesting, and it doesn't require lots of walking. It's directly opposite the metro station. Mum loved it, though we did stand in the shade a bit to avoid the heat. Even in March, it's starting to heat up. If you're visiting in summer, that's a must, or at the very least, a sun hat. So feeling on a roll and fresh, we decided to go for the big one, the Acropolis. I'd already researched that there is a lift to take people with limited mobility up. Unfortunately, it was broken. So at that point we had 2 choices. Either walk up slowly, it's uneven ground, or admire it from a distance. We went with option 2. Mum decided it wasn't worth the struggle. Instead we took in the great views from below. On reflection, after what she managed the rest of this time there, I think she could have nailed it. It is one of those moments where you just have to accept limitations and adapt. Could she have done it? Well, I really think so. Was it worth the risk on the first day? Definitely not. So instead, we made our way to Plaka, which is far easier to navigate, chance to look at some souvenirs, and we went to a rooftop restaurant I'd been to before. This is where familiarity with the area helps. I would definitely recommend if you're taking an elderly relative away and you're not sure if they can go somewhere you've been before or somewhere you've researched thoroughly. The food was good. I wouldn't say amazing. You know, there's much nicer food in Athens, but I knew it was going to be edible. I knew there'd be a fantastic view of the Parthenon as the sun went down, and it was well worth going to.
I think it's the loveliest restaurant.
Yeah? And what did you like about it?
The friendly service, everything.
Right, and the view?
And the view.
Brilliant. See ya. Mum ordered a cheese and spinach pie, which she couldn't finish, so the restaurant insisted on boxing it up for her. Another win. After that, we took a gentle evening stroll through Plaka, admiring the Acropolis because they light it up at night. No pressure, just enjoying the atmosphere before hopping on the metro back to the hotel. Knowing there was no kettle in the room, we stopped at what's called Metro Cafe, which was halfway between the metro and the hotel, for a quick coffee and sit outside and have another cheeky ciggy. And would you believe it, by the end of that day, considering it was only really a part day, Mum had notched up 12,000 bloody steps and she still wasn't done. So really good first day, and I thought, yeah, I've done the right thing here. So what worked? It was great first day balance, short activities, planned rest breaks, hotel choice was solid, nothing special, but it had a lift, a metro and a balcony. Plaka at night was beautiful. What would I change? The kettle in the room, and well, I'm thinking not checking the Acropolis. I had no say over whether the lift was working, so it's one of them. Apparently, according to the locals, this is quite a regular thing. The lift often doesn't work, which is a shame. So, let's have a look at day 2. It's going to be another action-packed day with a bit of an Uber fail. After that day where Mum managed 12,000 steps, I knew we could take on most things. Today's plan was a slow morning, an accessible way to see the Acropolis, a bit of a wander through a market, and unfortunately we ended up with a failed Uber trip that we turned into an unexpected adventure. For all the days there, we went for the standard European breakfast of coffee and pastry. Mum loves pastry, I love coffee. So, a bit of a slow start, but what the hell. One thing I quickly learned, rushing an elderly parent in the morning is not the way to go, so we started it slow and steady. Cost-wise, cafes are much cheaper than hotel breakfast anyway, if our hotel had even offered it. And it's always worth factoring in time to sit and eat. So the next stop, the Acropolis Museum, because if you can't get up the Acropolis itself, this is the next best thing, and you'll see why in a minute. So we'd skip the hike, obviously. I just had a quick check to see if the lift was broken, and it still was. So Mum got decent experience of Athens history, taking a look at the statues, the exhibits, the gaps where the ones in London should be, and there's a nice terrace, which for me, I've been there before. Definitely visit it early in the day because it's also a bit of an upmarket, or tries to be a bit of an upmarket restaurant. You will get a table in the morning and they won't rush you if you just have a coffee and a pastry. And it's got probably one of the best views of the Acropolis and the Parthenon from that side. And it was a win, you know, there's no getting away from it. Some of the best views you can get. Total cost for the Acropolis Museum seems a bit steep at €20 each, but let's face it, there's only one Acropolis Museum. And we were there a good chunk of the morning. Now, Mum loves a flea market, she loves a bit of shopping, and where better than Monastiriki Square? It's a flea market just off it, it's a great place for just chilling, there's some lovely coffee shops there. But this is another tip, build in the regular coffee breaks. You know, they will need them, and to be honest, I don't hate them. So after this, I had a plan. It was to get an Uber to the funicular to go up Mount Lycabettus. I knew it was a bit of a trek, and I was just being sensible and didn't think Mum would make it. But then we hit our first major fail, really. Now, Athens traffic is unpredictable at best. Unfortunately, there was a protest going on, so the Uber had to bail at Ammonia. Thank God it was at Ammonia because there's a station nearby. Anyone who's been before knows Ammonia is not the nicest of areas, but we had no problems. In a train and decided what we're going to do. Well, we've got a hankering to look at a cruise one day for Mum, maybe. So I thought, oh God, let's just go to Piraeus. So we headed out to Piraeus to have a look at the cruise ships, and more just to be doing something while we planned the rest of our day. It wasn't a long journey, and we know how easy it is to get to now. The same line goes direct from the airport, so that's handy to know. And nothing special about Piraeus, but it's a good place. We saw the sea. Obviously, coffee and a quick light bite, because it wasn't lunchtime, but it was a good few hours after breakfast by this point. So after the detour, we decided to have another go at Mount Lycabettus. So I headed to the nearest metro station, and I gave Mum the option of getting an Uber from there, and she goes, no, let's try a walk. Now the problem is Mount Lycabettus is on top of a hill. Every hill has a foothill, and the most direct route involved a lot of steps, and Mum hit them like a trooper. A few times I said, Mum, do you want to stop? Let's get an Uber. She goes, no, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do it. And we actually managed to get to within 200 metres, and she said, no, can't take another step. So I got the phone out, got an Uber. Now, it feels really bad getting an Uber for 200 yards. However, because the road route is about 2 miles, the Uber driver still got a reasonable fare. But it wasn't expensive, I think it was €6. But €6 got us to the funicular, and up we went. Nothing beats the view up there. There's a lovely cafe, in fact there's a restaurant and a cafe. Been there before, I had a pint, Mum had a coffee. We didn't bother eating because we weren't particularly hungry, and we just took in the view, stroked the cats, and had a bit of a chill. Quick check of the step counter on the phone, and Mum's getting close to 11,000 steps again. She's done well, hasn't she? So we decided we wanted a relaxed dinner. I had no idea what was near the hotel, so out comes Google Maps. And we found a place called Kapani, and it looked very nice, definitely a bit bohemian. It had the longest wine list I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it was a little bit busy, but we promised to be in and out in an hour and a half, so they found us a space. Mum had a chicken on a tabbouleh, free-range chicken on a sort of, best way to describe it is a couscous. I think they called it a tabbouleh. It was more than enough for Mum. Nice looking meal. Now, I had a squid carbonara. Now, I was expecting, when I see the word squid carbonara, I'm expecting a standard carbonara, pasta, pancetta, a little bit of squid. That's certainly what you'd get in the UK. But no, the Greeks put a twist on it. No pasta, replaced that entire volume in squid. It was divine. That alone was the dining highlight of the trip for me. It wasn't ridiculously expensive. I think it came in at €14. This was at the point where we made the decision to jump on a tour for the next day. It was one that Book had refused to go on because it was too damn long on a bus. It was a trip to the Hermit Caves and the monasteries of Meteora, billed as a 15-hour trip. So a successful second day. The museum was a win, the market was a win, low effort, lots of browsing, lots of rest stops. Piraeus was a great detour because we can say we've been there, spontaneous, easy. Mount Lycabettus, bit of a trek, but well worth going up there. It's the highest point in Athens. And with that, she hit 13,000 steps again. Time to rest up because Meteora might just break her. What are you thinking of it so far? Have a look in the comments. Bear in mind, if you've got an elderly relative that's more infirm than Mum, most of these places were wheelchair accessible. So for day 3, which is the final full day, Meteora. This was the big one. Long travel, stunning sights, and an ultimate test of accessibility. 15-hour coach tour. Now this is picked up, luckily, from Larissa Station, which was visible from our hotel room. We knew we were on a winner already, no travel to get the pickup, time for breakfast. It was a 7 AM start, which wasn't ridiculous seeing as we were only 5 minutes away, and Meteora is about 4.5 hours from Athens. So we know we're going to have a long stint on the coach, but internet's good there. There was a stop halfway to have a coffee and make use of the facilities before finally arriving and picking up the tour guide, who was absolutely amazing. We'd booked this trip through Viator, and I nearly always go through Viator or Klook, and I've never been totally disappointed. This girl was passionate about the experience, she was passionate about the area, she was from the area. And the first stop was for traditional Greek lunch in the village before we headed on up there. We went to the Hermit Caves first, then the lunch. Now Meteora is famous for its clifftop monasteries. One of them was featured in a James Bond film. They've been in lots of stuff. There was actually up to 24 there at one point, of which this tour has access to 4 that are accessible. They also go to the Grand Meteora Monastery, which they reckon isn't worth going into because there's so much of it you can't go. But the views were just stunning. The rock formations were stunning. The Hermit Caves were really interesting. We weren't able to go into them, but we could see where they were. Now the plan was that we were going to go into 3 monasteries, but here's where we had to adapt again. Mum has a fear of heights and she doesn't like bridges. And honestly, I don't blame her. They're stunning but precarious. So Mum enjoyed the blurb from the tour guide. I went into all the monasteries. Mum was safe. In fact, she sat and had a cheeky ciggy with the bus driver on 2 of them. But she still got to see them. She still got to hear about them. She still got to learn about them. In fact, the tour guide doesn't come in with you anyway. So she probably learned more about the area off the tour guide during the 30 minutes we went into a monastery than she would have learned if she'd come in. The last monastery was really easy to get to, so Mum came in and she's so glad she did. The views were amazing. If you ever go to Athens, I can thoroughly recommend this. So we weren't shattered, but it was time for the way back, which was another 4.5 hour trip. Again, unlike everybody else on the bus, we were virtually getting dropped off at our hotel. So sit back and enjoy the ride and watch Greece go past. There was a stop on the way back where we were offered a meal, which I thought was the only expensive meal I had there. But it was a good size. Mum wasn't especially hungry, so I brought the 2-course meal and split it with Mum. Kept us both going. And we still got back in time to have a coffee when we got there. Was Meteora too much for Mum? Not really, because when you think about it, the coach does all the hard work. She loves the coach trip anyway. We adapted. Mum didn't take on all the walking elements, but she did most of it. And the guide was interesting. If I was to change anything, I'd possibly maybe have an overnight stop in Meteora, so we'd cut out the 2 long coach trips in a day and maybe do the monastery tour in the morning. And someone was saying you can get a slightly longer monastery tour if you're already in the area. But wasn't disappointed in the slightest, and I would recommend it to anyone. If you are only going on a short break, I think this is the only way to do it, cram it into a day. So after 3 packed days, it was time to head home. One final relaxed morning. We had a coffee at the cafe at the railway station. Mum took in the last few views, and we went back on the train rather than the metro. Because the train's outside the whole way, you get a bit of a last-minute view of Athens. We'd actually told Wizz Air, who we flew back with, because we'd gone with EasyJet and came back with Wizz Air, because I like to save a quid, that Mum had limited mobility, but we didn't require the special assistance, because basically we both wanted a chance to go to the duty-free shop, which we did, of course. So we got to the... Now, I never get on a plane first. I always sit around and wait, because why stand in a queue when you can sit in a seat? And to our surprise, we were called. Priority boarding, straight on. The only downside was, if you've got the priority boarding for someone with mobility issues, Wizz Air insists they sit by the window. Bit of a joke with Mum, that if anything goes wrong, we'll leave you behind. I get the concept, it's so that you're not crawling past someone who can't move easily. So Mum nagged my window seat. The advantage was, because we were priority, although we only travel with with personal item, we were allowed to put it in the overhead. So I was able to stretch my feet a bit, which was nice. On arrival at Luton, we were given priority passport control. Another bonus of travelling with an oldie. In fact, if I had less scruples, I might take a stick next time I go. The hardest bit, 5-hour drive back to Anglesey. But it was worth it. We had a fantastic time. So let's talk costs, because I know some of you will be wondering, because let's face it, I do try to stick to budget travel. Flights and hotel package, wait for it, £96 per person. Bang, that's good. Especially seeing it was like going on a summer holiday because the weather was amazing. What we did was, rather than Mum get confused with exchange rates, everything went on my card, so it was dead easy to work out what we spent. 440 total, which is £220 each, which comes to £70 a day per person. Which sounds, it's not expensive, but it's not mega cheap. However, bear in mind that's 3 meals a day, drinks, coffee, and the Meteora trip was 150 for the 2 of us. So you're down to a budget of next to nothing. You know, if you'd cut the Meteora trip out, you'd have been down to 150 each for 3 days. You're down to 50 quid a day then, aren't you? Really couldn't fault it. To be honest, we lived well, we ate out, we took tours and we had drinks. Didn't really cut any corners. Okay, we didn't splash out either. So the big question, can you travel with an elderly relative without compromising your own experience? You can if you take my mum. She had a fantastic time. Problem is she's getting the bug for it now. She's dropping hints for Canada. But I wasn't sure if we'd be able to nail it. But the answer is you definitely can. It's all about balance. Be prepared to not do everything and mix uptime with downtime. Now I'm a bit of I don't go on holiday to relax. I go on holiday to see it all. And I didn't feel like my holiday was cut short. If I hadn't been before, I might have felt a bit peeved that I hadn't gone up the Acropolis, but I did it 3 months earlier, so I wasn't peeved at all. And it doesn't matter, this holiday was for Mum. Pre-planning goes a long way, or at least having a rough idea. I'm not a big fan of the ultimate itinerary and sticking to it. I like to freelance. And adapting on the go. For example, nobody could have predicted the lift being broken. According to the Greeks, you can predict it being broken because it is a lot. And nobody could have predicted the street riots stopping us going to the funicular. So you adapt, you go and look at something else instead. That's what holidays are. So all I can say is, if you've ever thought of taking a parent or grandparent, do it. But be prepared to change your plans as you go. And if you're planning a trip to Athens, drop a comment below. I can always give you some pointers. Thanks ever so much for watching. Really be interested in what you think of this format, and we'll see you again soon.